Hi, everybody. Everybody, thank you for coming. We have a very jam-packed evening with some important information up front. We're going to hear from Steve Max, who's going to talk to you about how to use the microphones in a minute. But first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming. My name's Danielle Girard. I'm the president of Three Parks Independent Democrats, which is a huge honor. Look at how many people have come to this meeting. You're all very engaged. It's a wonderful thing. We're going to have petitioning and issues and all kinds of work coming up. But I want to say that many of us, or all of us, have been following the disheartening news from Minneapolis and the murder being committed by our government, specifically by the president's brown shirts. For those of you who either were born shortly after World War II or have studied it, you know where this all ends up. And so I want to thank all of you for coming out, because the participation of us, of the masses, of the people across the country is extremely heartening. The absolute opposite of what's being done in our name. And so I'm really grateful that we can all be here together to hear from people who are actually fighting for democracy and will continue to fight for democracy. So with that being said, please give yourselves a round of applause for participating in our democracy. Come on, you can do better than that. Let's go, let's go. Let's go. Together we're going to take these people on and we're going to beat them, and we're going to beat them at their own game. And if you have friends in Minneapolis or Minnesota or out in California where the first person was killed by ICE, please give them our best. And with that, Steve Max is going to give you a little lecture on how to use the microphones for the Q&A period. Hi, Earl.
It's not a lecture, it's a technological interlude. There's a difference. There's going to be time after each speaker to be for questions, and the chair will call on you. And when you get called on, somebody will come with a microphone like this one. When you get the microphone, first of all, wait for the microphone. Don't start speaking without the microphone. Now, I know there are those here who feel that you have such a powerful voice that you don't need a microphone. And that may be true, that the people in front of you can hear you. But as I've often said, if the people behind you can hear you as well as the people in front of you, you should consult a physician. Now, when the microphone comes, hold it very close to your mouth. Don't do what the folks up here do. They can be back a foot from the microphone, because these work differently than the ones on the floor. Now, there's one more important reason to wait for the microphone, and that is that the meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be put up on YouTube in a couple of days. And the recording device only picks up what goes through the amplifier. It doesn't pick up the sound in the room. So if you don't wait for the microphone, there will be an answer from the speaker, but no question. Now, how can there be an answer without a question? Philosophers have debated this for centuries, and they don't know. So wait for the microphone.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you. Steve is also our webmaster and does so much for the club. So let's have a round of applause for Steve and all the other board members who are here tonight. One further thing to keep in mind when you do get the microphone. First of all, I just want to say for people in the back, if you're eager to have a conversation, please do it out in the hallway. We'll close the doors so we can't hear you. I'm going to repeat that during the evening. I don't want to tell the same person more than twice or once. Also, when you ask your questions, what we really would like you to do is to make it a question. And a question in under 10 seconds is even better, because then everyone else here gets to ask a question. Okay, so we have a lot of candidates coming tonight. Lynn Max is handing out a piece of paper with all of their names so that you can spell their names. Lynn, I think there's a gentleman at the door who can help us with more chairs. Thank you. Yes, please. So do please take a seat. If you're at the end of an aisle, please go to the middle. You'll want to stay till the bitter end. So first we're going to have Nina Schwalbe. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. We would love to invite you up. Our candidate, our first speaking candidate for the 12th.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you all. It was my name. Well, thank you all for inviting me here. It was really nice because I only live 3 blocks away, which I live at Park West Village, so it was really nice. Now I'm going to try. Thank you. I was saying I live at Park West Village, so it was a nice walk over here. And thank you for inviting me. My name is Nina, and I'm running for Congress because we're doing a terrible job, and we can do better. And if we continue to send the same types of Democrats to Washington to represent us, we're not going to get the change that we need. I'm a public health expert, advocate, and scientist, and I've worked in over 100 countries around the world. And in March 2020, my father got COVID, one of the first people to get COVID in the city. And I took care of him by myself. We didn't have any services, no palliative care, no oxygen, no nothing. And all he really had was me in his apartment. He also lived in the district on the Upper East Side. And after that, I decided to bring my global advocacy and my global fight home to New York. And I fought Albany to get ventilators. Governor Cuomo, had a big stock of ventilators in a warehouse in Albany in April 2020, and he wouldn't release them to us. We offered to bring cars and vans to get up and get them, and we fought him for those ventilators. We fought to keep kids in school. We fought to reduce the 6 feet to 3 feet rule because many of our schools are small. That was a recommendation, and we fought to keep our kids in school and put together a testing system so that our kids could go in person to school. And the last part of that fight was to get vaccines to older and people who had mobility issues and people of color in our city. We realized quite early on that those big mass vaccination sites just were too hard to get to, and it was too hard to sign up. So we fought hard to get community sites. And from there, I was asked by the Biden administration to run their $7 billion global program to distribute 500 million vaccines worldwide. And from vaccines to science, to abortion, to SNAP, to housing, to transit, to justice, the list goes on and on. We're losing our democracy and the systems that protect us. I'm 6th generation in this district, which I didn't know. I thought I was 5th, but my cousin corrected me and said that I had a relative named Abraham who lived on 48th Street in the 1850s. I'm a lesbian. I'm a scientist, and I'm a mom. And from the PTA, actually here at PS 84, to the G7, I've used my voice for change, to fight to fix broken systems and for the right for everyone, everywhere, to have access to health, happiness, and justice. So I'm here tonight because if you want the same old Democrats, that's definitely not me. But if you want a candidate that's here for change and is going to change the way Washington works, I hope I get your vote. And I'd love to answer questions. Thank you so much.
Do we have any questions? Remember to wait for the mic.
While we're going to the mic, I did want to acknowledge I spoke to a friend in Minneapolis today, and they said their kids aren't going to school because they're afraid to go to school. And that was quite an upsetting thing to hear, in addition to the murder in our streets by our federal government. Just the idea that kids are afraid to go to school is horrific.
Hello, so I'm Liam. My mother's a bigger member to this whole thing than me, but I'm curious, when you say, if you don't want the same Democrat to go for you, what does that really mean? I'm curious.
I'm not a career politician. I don't know any of you in the clubs. I don't know any of the clubs. Actually, my club is downtown, and we were redistricted, but I didn't redistrict with my club. I've spent my life working for people, working for change, working for equity, working in the streets, being an advocate, running healthcare programs and social services program. And this is my first run for office since high school head of the Athletic Association, which I won.
You sound fantastic. How would you, given that you're new, how would you go about raising your profile and enough money to get known, given that you don't have as much set up as other candidates, perhaps?
Yeah. We've already raised $300,000, and we have over 350 donors, unique donors, mostly from Manhattan. I was joking around that I'm like, sometimes it says on the list Florida, and you're like, Andrew, you don't live in Florida, and he's like, yeah, my tax district is whatever, but all from Manhattan, so 350 donors, and we're going to hit the streets, and we're hitting the streets with volunteers. We're a volunteer-run and led campaign, and we have over 50 volunteers, and starting next week, you're going to see us at the 72nd Street subway, on the east side, just talking to people. And we still believe that talking to people is the best way to do New York politics. Also, you can follow us on social. We have a pretty great social campaign.
Woman in the red shirt, please.
Thank you.
Red sweater.
Hi. So I'm sorry, Nina, that I missed your presentation. I just got here, but I've heard you speak before, and I am really impressed. I want to ask, I didn't hear the rules, but I want to ask 3 quick questions of every candidate.
Super.
And I'm sure you can answer them fairly quickly. One is, do you commit to join the Progressive Caucus? Do you commit to voting to abolish ICE? To voting against increases in the military budget and against military aid to Israel?
Yes. And on the third question, I think that any offensive aid that's distributed anywhere in the world needs to be heavily conditioned and should not be used on civilian populations, 100,000 people dead. And that's true of really everywhere where we're supporting war.
Gentleman in the blue shirt, blue sweater.
Thank you. How do you address improving access to health care and also the inequality of wealth, the growing inequality of wealth in this country?
I'm a fan of taxing rich people and closing loopholes. Can you guys hear me okay? Should I hold the mic? Is that better? Yeah. Hold it as close as I can. All right, great. So that's one part of it. And on healthcare, that's a subject I could speak for hours about. But I want to talk about the current system and the future system. In the current system, we know that the Affordable Care Act, the subsidies have to continue. But for those of us on the Affordable Care Act, we know it's not really affordable. So that's an immediate stopgap with a system that needs to be fixed. With Medicaid, we can't have any conditionalities. That's an immediate thing we need to do. So there are no work conditionalities on that. And for Medicare, it's very complicated and it needs to be simpler. But those are systems that we have in place which bring us towards universal health coverage. And I will start, and this is the policy I'm very excited about, lots of policies, but with universal primary health care. And what does that mean? That means we can go to our local clinic and we can get vaccines and cancer screenings and naloxone and our contraception and abortion. We can go to our local clinics to get that. We have a system in place called federally qualified health centers, which are which are already doing that. They have bipartisan support because they also serve rural populations around the U.S. We have very few in our district. I think you guys probably know Ryan Health right here, so that's one. We need much, much more. So that's something I'm going to fight for right away as universal primary care as the first step to universal health coverage.
Thank you very much, Nina.
Great.
Thank you very much. Let's give a warm send-off to Nina.
Thank you very much for your time.
Next up, please, we have, our next candidate is Jamie Floyd, who's going to talk to us about her plans for Congress.
Hello. Let me try it. How does this sound? Does this sound okay? So I'm not going to talk about myself because I would rather talk about all of you and our common problem, which, hey, hi, how are ya? Thank you for being here. No, he's our common friend. Our problem is not ICE, it's not MAGA, and it's not just Trump. Our problem is listening. And that's because we're not listening. Now, how do I know this? I know this because I am walking every single block in this district. And I started this before I launched my campaign in October. And when I walk the district, people tell me that they are begging our party, the Democratic Party, to help them pay the rent, meet the mortgage, feed their families. They tell me they're scared on our streets, under all the scaffolding at night, and underground on the subway. And now we're scared in our houses of worship. Middle class and working class families say the taxes are too damn high for them and not high enough for the billionaires. And seniors are scared they will not be able to age in place with dignity. Now I scratch my head and I think, well, wait a minute, we've been listening. We think we're listening, but we're not hearing. We're not hearing because we are shouting as a party about what we stand for and where we're going. And when we shout, the loudest voices get all the attention, and everyday New Yorkers who are squeezed in the most expensive city in the country and scared in Trump's America are silenced. But I am listening, and I hear you. I am Jamie Floyd, and I am a radical moderate. What's that mean? Well, radical, because I believe in progress. But moderate, because I know that progress only happens when we work together. Together to build more housing with federal dollars modeled on Mitchell-Lama, where I grew up. Together to fight for more money for safer streets and subways, like I did when I worked for Al Gore in the White House. And together to stand against ICE in our city and for the right to vote, which right now is under duress and threat in our country and in our Supreme Court, like our parents did, right? My parents, and I'm sure many of yours. That generation knew that crisis demands courage, and people, we are in a crisis. And so I'm going around to the Democratic clubs, and this goes back to what Liam said earlier. I am asking the clubs to meet this moment with courage, not complacency. This is not a time for business as usual. If you've been to the Capitol recently, we all know it's being run by a dictator and the country's being stormed by his stormtroopers at his behest. But the Capitol is an occupied city. This is not the time to send in a technocrat. Ask yourselves, is this the time to send in another tech bro after Elon Musk and his minions dismantled our federal government? Ask yourselves if you should send in the toughest candidate in the race with the sharpest elbows and real Washington experience to get it done. And if the answer is yes, then you are looking at that candidate. So let's get down to business and take our country back. And now I'll take your questions. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions for Jamie? All right, well then let's give her a round of applause and thank her for coming.
All right, thank you very much, and I got to go, and I appreciate it. Can I answer there was one woman who had 3 questions who wanted all the candidates to answer. Is she still here? Yeah. Will you commit to joining the Progressive Caucus? I will caucus with the progressives, with the problem solvers, and with others. Number 2, will you commit to abolish ICE? I was listening, and the answer, when the facts on the ground change, my opinion changes, and people are being shot dead in the streets. We are at a crisis unlike any we've seen since the Civil War in this country. And so the answer is not just about ICE, it's about Homeland Security. It's about Border Patrol. It's about using the Attorney General as your personal retaliatory lawyer. It's about the Department of Justice, which was a civil rights organization established in the wake of the Civil War to enforce civil rights, now being used to trample on our civil rights. All of this must be evaluated and reviewed. And I say abolish Trump. That's what we need to be doing. Abolish Trump. Let's not be distracted. Abolish Trump. And number 3, the question about aid to Israel is very... Oh, you had 4 questions? I thought you had 3. Okay, go ahead.
Increases in the military budget.
Okay, so this question is very hard to answer in a yes or no because it's nuanced, it's complicated, it's difficult. Defensive weaponry like the dome, I will always support. And I want to be very clear, for me, there is no question but that I support Israel. And I stand with those who stand with Israel. But I also, my heart breaks. What has happened in not only Gaza, but in the West Bank is a heartbreaking and devastating, not just for the people who are suffering there, but for the democracy that is Israel. And so we have to ask ourselves about Benjamin Netanyahu and our allyship there. And I understand the implications of your question, but I don't want to monopolize, and I'd be happy to talk with you further afterwards if you'd like, and anyone else who wants to discuss that issue.
Okay. Gentleman in the green shirt and then the woman in the black sweater.
So I have a question that could apply for all candidates as well, which I think is relevant. We obviously have critical national and international issues, but as Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. And obviously we're a local Democratic club. My question, which I'd love to ask all candidates, is give an example of a time you worked on an issue in association with community boards and local groups. And I didn't ask Nina because she had talked at length about it. That's the question.
Thank you so much. I will try to do this as brief as I can. I serve on Community Board 7, as my friend to your right knows. And I'm very proud to be on Community Board 7, and I've served on 4 committees on that community board. I currently chair public safety, which is a committee I've just stood up because we had no, believe it or not, no public safety committee on Community Board 7. And I felt that was a horrible abyss at this time when people are saying to me as I walk the district, I care about public safety, where is that committee? So that's number 1. I also co-chaired transportation, and we were able to do very specific things on the ground for your safety, including daylighting at various intersections, which we identified in partnership with the Department of Transportation and community partners right here in the district. And I can go on, but I will just cite those two things. I also served on Health and Human Services and Housing, which of course is our number one affordability crisis.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, this is a question I also want to ask every candidate. So several months ago, a representative from Massachusetts named Seth Moulton said that even though he is pro-Israel, he could no longer, in good conscience, take donations from AIPAC, which is a group that supports extremist settlers in the West Bank and has endorsed insurrectionist Republicans. And even Jerry Nadler, who is pro-Israel, has never taken money from AIPAC. So would you commit to also never taking money from AIPAC?
So I've not had a meeting with any, I have not had a meeting with anyone from AIPAC at this time, nor have they asked me to have a meeting. There's a problem in our politics. I think I see one of my colleagues here, so I'm sure he's going to want to address this as well. There's a problem in our politics when we're having conversations about PACs and super PACs. I'm getting the 1 minute, but this is so critically important in a room full of Democrats. We have a problem in our politics when our politics have become about money and not about voters. It's become about $1, one vote, instead of one person, one vote, as Earl Warren wrote. And I spend my time talking to the voters when I'm constantly being reminded that I should spend my time sitting in a chair dialing for dollars or taking money. Do I sound a little angry? Taking money or meetings with people who can give me money through PACs and super PACs. And this is whether it's AIPAC or some other PAC that I might be more inclined to meet with. I mean, there are lots of PACs that we might have trouble with, tobacco PACs or big oil PAC. Or there might be PACs I might be aligned with. For example, PACs that are affiliated with civil rights organizations that I am very much aligned with. But the bottom line is I want to be talking with the voters, and instead I'm being asked to think about raising money. And what is all this money for? Why is this a multi-million dollar, $25 million race when there are people starving in the streets right outside this building? I'd rather give my money to them. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, next up we have Assembly Member Alex Borres. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. How are you? How's the sound? Just mic check? Good? Okay. Yell at me if I move the mic too much. I want to make sure you can hear. It's so great to be here. Even though I'm an assembly member from the East Side, we've gotten to work together on a bunch of projects, most notably expanding the number of judges in Manhattan so that we can have more state Supreme Court judges, so that we can have speedy trials and everyone has access to justice. So I see a lot of friends out in the room. Those that I have not met, brief introduction, I'm Alex Borres, state assembly member. I'm born, raised, and lived nearly my entire life in New York 12, where I'm now raising my newborn son. My wife and I just had a 5-month-old. I'm newly a parent. Thank you. Thank you. He just had his first solid food. He had a much better week than I did. But I went to all public schools in the district. I've always been a strong supporter of public schools and never wavered on that. But the best education I ever got was actually on the picket line with my dad when I was 8 years old, and he and his union were locked out for fighting for better health care. And from that early age, I learned two important things. One, health care needs to be universal. We need Medicare for all. And two, the way that we win is by building a movement, whether that's a union, a campaign, a political organization. It's only by working together that we can actually get anything done. I then spent most of my career in tech, and when I was elected in 2022 to the State Assembly, I became the first Democrat elected in New York State at any level with a degree in computer science, a fact that I find 10% cool and 90% horrifying. But that brings us almost to the present day, and so I'll just skip along and say that There are a lot of really qualified candidates in this race. This is an embarrassment of riches in candidate quality. I've gotten to meet a lot of them at the forums, and the district will be in good hands. I just want to give you 3 things that I think set me apart. The first is, as Democrats, we need to fight Trump, and I'll talk about that in a second, but we also need a positive vision, and we need to be delivering for people. We need devastatingly effective legislators. In my time in the Assembly in 3 years, I've passed 27 bills. The most recent one was yesterday, helping to protect kids in youth sports from concussions. That 27 bills is about the same amount that Congress as a whole passed in 2023. And the Center for Effective Lawmaking, which is a nonprofit that ranks Congress members and legislators throughout the country, ranked me the most effective new legislator from New York City, something I'm really proud of. I've proven that I can move bills and actually deliver for people. The second thing that sets me apart is that knowledge of tech and of AI. Most of the candidates in this field are going to vote the same way 90 to 95% of the time, as I think you'll see at these forums. The way that a freshman really can make a difference is by bringing in expertise or a knowledge that doesn't currently exist in the body, something that no one in Congress is currently addressing. For me, that's clear. It's tech. Time magazine named me one of the 100 most influential people in the world in AI. I don't think I deserve that, but it was nice. But I would walk in with an immediate a bully pulpit and be an immediate leader in technology, and Congress has to deal with a lot of issues. I'm not saying this is the most important one, but they are clearly missing the boat on this the same way they missed it on social media, and we need experts in Congress that can actually deliver. That is a bonus you will get from me in office that, along with the votes, will be similar with everyone else. And the last thing I want to say that sets me apart has to do with fighting Donald Trump, something that we're all obviously pledging to do. Donald Trump wrote an executive order specifically to target my AI bill. I passed it anyway, the strongest AI safety bill in the country, and got the governor to sign it, and that really ticked off his mega donors. And so 3 of them started a super PAC and have pledged $10 million to defeat my campaign for Congress. So while we're all telling you we're going to fight Trump, and I think we all believe we are going to fight Trump, I am the only one that Trump and his mega donors are fighting back against. And I think that says more than any of us could at a forum. So thank you, and I really look forward to the questions.
All right, questions for Alex, right over there. And again, please limit your questions to actual questions.
Yes, I will. So you mentioned your expertise in technology. So 3 questions, or 3 quick info questions related to that. One is, how do you suggest we deal with the issue when it comes to AI of its increasing the costs for electricity for all of us? So the power grid questions, et cetera. Dealing with questions of jobs and making companies perhaps put money aside to pay people who lose their jobs, et cetera.
This is great. You're answering your own questions.
Okay. And then the third is something that's in schools a lot, which is not related to AI per se, but cell phones and, restricting kids, which I haven't think is a good idea, but I'd like to hear your views on how to deal with negative social media and stuff like that.
Awesome. I could talk to you about this for a couple hours, but I will try to be very brief. I was recently on this Bloomberg podcast called Odd Lots, where I got really deep on this, so if you're interested in more, I would say that. But on data centers, the people who are installing them should be paying for all of the upgrades. We should all the interconnects. We should also be insisting on renewable energy powering it so that the grid is actually cleaner and cheaper at the end of it, instead of passing the costs on to all of us. When it comes to jobs, it's a big question of job retraining programs, licenses that help transition over time where there are changes, taxes on the AI companies themselves to fund things like a safety net and maybe universal basic income, and yes, companies putting it aside, especially the ones that do layoffs because of AI, which now in New York they have to disclose if that's true because of the WARN Act. And lastly, kids in schools with social media. I was a big supporter of the bell-to-bell ban of cell phones. I think so far that has been a real success. Social media is preying on our kids. And so we need to do a lot of the things that we've done already in New York nationwide, like warning labels on the addictive behavior, a chronological feed, so it just shows you people that you opt into seeing by default, instead of sending you a bunch of messages and pushing you down a rabbit hole. And I think we should be exploring things like Australia just did, of an age limit and age cutoff for kids. I think we're going to look back at the time of social media the way we look back at the early times of cigarettes, and we really need to be serious about this.
Water in 2030. So if you could expand on how the plan for renewables is going to address that.
Yeah, that is one of the easier solvable problems about AI. We just need people to actually do it. Most of the data centers in the US use closed circuit water, where it's not actually wasting a lot of that, but that is not required. So what Elon Musk is doing down in near Memphis is just like going through massive amounts of gallons of water, which then make it not available, and when there are droughts, make that awful. So we can regulate that. You can use closed circuit loops that just keep the water internal instead of evaporating it off. The energy problem, because that's being hard consumed, is the one that is technically difficult and needs a lot of focus as well. But we should absolutely be regulating the water consumption and not letting them use massive amounts. That is like, there is no technical reason they can't do it. You can just pass a law to stop that.
Okay, sorry, I do that in the white hair,
Hi, Alex.
How are you?
Good, thanks. I know freshmen don't always get their first choice, but what would be your first choice for a committee assignment?
Yeah, obviously appropriations, but yeah, no, freshmen don't get that, right? So my first choice, the one that I think is achievable and I think has the biggest impact, would be transportation. So in the Assembly, I'm on 6 committees. In Congress, you get 1, maybe 2. And so transportation would be the one I would ask for, because this district, more than almost any other district, is getting infrastructure dollars, and we need someone in office who will fight for that. Obviously, the threat we just saw with Gateway being the construction being stopped, we need a strong fighter in the seat for that. Being on transportation allows me to fight for that stronger than I would without, so that's my first pick. It's something I've done in Albany. I got $50.1 million for my assembly district last year. I know how to fight for these dollars. I will continue to do that. Now, bonus is transportation is like a C-tier committee in terms of prestige. So you can ask for another maybe as a freshman and maybe you get that. And thankfully, for my purposes, the science committee is like a D or F-tier committee. No one wants it. So I would also ask for science as a second one to do all of the AI work that I'm talking about. But transportation would be my first pick. And please don't tell the chair of the science committee that I said it was a D or F committee.
Hi, I have 2 questions. The first is that a lot of my peers have been concerned about your work history at Palantir, and I'm wondering if you could just directly respond to that.
Totally.
And then the second one is that my understanding is that AI safety means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and so I'm hoping that you can name specific people, researchers, organizations, nonprofits, advocacy groups, like anything that you specifically look to when you're shaping your understanding of AI safety.
And I just got the 2 minutes remaining, so I'll try to be quick on both of those. So I joined Palantir during the Obama administration. The first project I worked on was helping a paper goods manufacturer in Wisconsin sell more tampons. It had nothing to do with what people think of as Palantir, but the work is diverse, right? And then I spent the rest of my time on the federal civilian team. So I worked with the Department of Justice to go after the opioid epidemic and the big banks for causing the Great Recession. While I was there, we recovered $20 billion for taxpayers from the big banks. I worked with Veterans Affairs to better staff their hospitals. And then Trump came in. And the Trump administration wanted to try to use Palantir for immigration purposes. I, as the lead of the DOJ project, said no. I refused to do it, and I had a contract that enabled me to do that. Separately, Palantir had a contract with ICE during the Obama administration, but specifically working on anti-trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, counterfeit goods. And then when Trump came in, Trump started wanting to use that for deportations. And I, along with others at the firm, said that is not a thing we should be doing. We should be saying no the same way I said no at DOJ. But when Palantir leadership made clear that they were not going to do that and were just going to renew the contract, I quit. And it's gauche to say, but I left generational wealth on the table in doing that. That was not a cheap choice, and I put my values ahead of my financial goals. And in fact, one of the biggest funders of the super PAC attacking me is a co-founder of Palantir. So that should tell you how they feel about me now. I have like 30 seconds for AI safety. Yoshua Bengio, Jeffrey Hinton, two of the big scientists. That Yoshua is the most widely cited living scientist for AI safety. I work with groups like Common Sense Media and Reset Tech on the addictive nature of social media and AI. I have worked with other groups to think about the bias of it, of schools and education. I can email you a long list afterwards, but it is a very big topic, as you said. But we need someone there that's thinking about the whole thing and understands not only from an academic perspective how the tech works, but also has seen the inside of businesses and what the incentives are and how the businesses will respond to the regulation. And I bring both of those perspectives. Thank you.
Because I was pushy, we're going to allow one more question. Somebody with a microphone.
Hi, I did hear your interview on Odd Lots, and
thank you.
I really glommed onto your idea of putting safe, guardrails into how AI is used. What I'm wondering about, in terms of fighting Trump, one of the things I think we have to think about is how he's just blown through all the customary guardrails that we assumed no president would ever do. Have you given thought to what legislative programs you would implement to create guardrails so we never have to deal with somebody like Trump again getting into office?
What a great question. Absolutely. And it's both the things that you pass immediately, and there's a long-term process of restoring power in Congress. So let me talk about both of those. There are so many norms that we expected presidents to follow that now need to be laws. You need to be disclosing your tax returns. You should be banned from outside income the same way Congress is banned from outside income. Like, that feels easy. You shouldn't be launching a meme coin. Like, we should be stepping into all of these things and actually putting them directly into law. We should also be exposing a lot more transparency around White House visitor logs and other aspects that allow people to really report on what's happening on the inside. I also think you shouldn't be able to start a super PAC when you're constitutionally limited from running for office again. That is just an intimidation PAC, and it's crazy that he can do that. So we need to be putting many of these things that we have assumed directly into law. We also need to understand that Trump cannot do it alone. Right? He does not fear subpoenas and prosecution because, frankly, he's going to be dead by the time the court system catches up to him. But everyone around him does face legal jeopardy. And so we need to be investigating and saving documents and being aggressive, because if the people around him feel like they're going to suffer consequences, that is when they are going to change, and that is when we're going to step in. I'm speaking too long already, but the longer term aspect is Trump was able to do this for two reasons. One, we weren't delivering, right? The younger generation just sees cynicism because they don't think government actually delivers, and part of the program is to deliver. And two, parties for decades, because Congress has been dysfunctional, have been happy to give the president more power because they can't act. And then Trump abused all of that. So we can write the laws that'll stop the specific thing he's doing now, but to really prevent a future Trump, you need to find a way to empower Congress again and get Congress actually working. And so that means fighting for reforms like real committee hearings, real hearings on bills, allowing people to introduce, going through the normal process, empowering the individuals and not having it all in the speakership. Those aren't laws, but those are reforms that everyone needs to be committed to if we're going to have a more robust democracy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. All right, next up, we have Laura Dunn. Please come up to the microphone.
Hello. I've decided to share a little bit about myself through a story about a federal policy that I helped establish. It was late on a Saturday. We had been going for hours. The head of our work group was pushing us to reach consensus, pushing us because the Trump administration was waiting for our recommendation. I'm Laura Dunn. I'm running for Congress in NY12 because I've been in rooms like that, making decisions on national law and policy without ever having run for office before. Most importantly, I was the only advocate in the room. And there's a reason for that. When this group was established by the American Bar Association, the most preeminent legal organization, they assigned 10 people. Only 2 spots were left for victim rights attorneys. I was one of the 2 selected. All the rest of this work group was pro-institution, pro-defendant, and pro-Trump. This group was tasked with creating federal rules for how schools should address campus sexual violence. They made it right before Trump came into office, and they made it to give Trump the recommendation to make it harder for victims of gender violence to get justice. That was the intended goal of this work group. So my team put me in. They nominated me, and they got me in that room. And I worked for months, unpaid, with advocates that were opposed to everything I stood for. And on the last day of this work group, I found myself as the only victim advocate left. There had been 2 at the start. She walked out. She gave up on the last day when we had the biggest fight. It was a fight about the standard of evidence that should be used in campus sexual assault hearings. See, when I worked with the Obama administration as an outspoken survivor and victim advocate before law school, I advocated for every single K-12 college and graduate program to adopt preponderance of the evidence as the standard for campus hearings. That gives both parties equal footing. Whoever has better evidence wins. And that is simple because it's fair. But the Trump administration doesn't want fair. I think you all know that at this point. What they wanted was abusers to be able to abuse and not be held accountable. So the plan that all these other individuals in this work group had was to argue for clear and convincing. It's a higher standard of evidence. The accused is given an advantage, a victim is given a disadvantage, and schools have a harder time removing abusers from campus as a result. Now, going into this work group, every single conservative think tank, every single legal organization had already recommended to Donald Trump that it should be clear and convincing to protect these poor young men from accusations on campus. But Trump was waiting for the American Bar Association, the most preeminent organization, to give him the authority to adopt the regulation he wanted. And on that last day, when the other advocate gave up saying the deck is stacked against us, I object, I'm out, I stayed in the room. Because I stayed in the room, I won. I kept the preponderance of the evidence standard in federal regulations. I did that under the first Trump administration, and as you sit here today under Trump's second administration, it's still there. It's there because one person stayed in a room that was stacked against victims' rights, where the other victim advocate left. I can claim that as a victory because of my courage. And the reason I picked this story to share to you is, one, I'm talking about the standard that's going to be used for your grandchildren when they experience harassment and abuse on campus. I myself am a survivor of gender violence. I stayed in that room because I didn't have a choice when I got assaulted on campus. I stayed in that room because I didn't get to have justice after the experience I had. I stayed in that room because I knew that there were victims everywhere who needed me to fight for them. And I picked this story because we are facing cowards in Congress. We are facing corruption. We are facing people who are saying the odds are stacked against us. I'm talking about the Democratic Party, who's sitting there waiting until the blue wave to do what they should be doing today. I'm not going to wait, and I'm not going to leave the room, and I don't care if the odds are against me. The reason I won in that room was very simple. On day one, I looked at who was there, and I made allyships with the defense attorneys. And to be clear, I'm their natural enemy. I literally put all their clients in jail or out of school every single day. They are not a fan of me. But we all understood that institutions abuse individuals. And because we had this shared understanding for our clients, we teamed up against the institutions, created procedural protections for our clients, both victims and accused. And because I made that coalition on that last day, when the other advocate fled and gave up, I cashed in all my goodwill. I gave them a small victory that made them look like they've tried, but they gave me the bigger victory that lasts to this day. When I see who's in this race, I see rookies who have never once stepped on Capitol Hill, who have never drafted a federal bill, who have never sat in a policy group, let alone one intentionally stacked against the odds to beat you down. I also see showmen. We know who they are. They're soaking up all the media attention, and you know they're not going to do the job because they're there for them. They're not there for you. And I know that we have some good state legislators that have stepped up. They've been waiting in line, taking their turn, and they think it's theirs now. Respectfully, when you have 2/3 of the state assembly that is already Democratic, you don't know what fighting is. I know what fighting is. I have passed legislation in Republican and Democratic Congresses, and I've passed it on the issue of sexual assault, which we all know is becoming a topic that is more divisive than it's ever been. My work has always been nonpartisan because I stand with people, not party, not class. So in stepping up to run for office, I'm doing so to ensure first and foremost government accountability. I want term limits on Congress. They're corrupt because they get to sit there and live out their days rather than being accountable to the people. I want to end the insider trading that's making them rich while we struggle to make ends meet. I want to make sure there's ethical standards for the U.S. Supreme Court. I want to bring accountability back so you, the people, can trust the process. I will be the one that stays in the room because I am not afraid of the odds being stacked against me.
Hi. What would you do to protect existing federal environmental protections and expand beyond what we already have? And thank you for sharing your story. That's really inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate the question. Last I checked, the federal environmental protections weren't doing so great. We have a Supreme Court that's gutting what we have done to protect the environment. They are corrupt. So going back to the accountability very briefly, I do want to investigate Supreme Court justices for the very obvious ties that they have to millionaires, corporations. We know at least one of them has a house that was purchased for his mom by a millionaire who has cases in front of him every day. That should not stand. Congress can impeach that. So we need to change the Supreme Court to be people who are not corrupt, who are not about politics, but who are actually about law again. And then going back to the actual laws that we've passed, a lot of them were good, but they didn't go far enough, right? The Paris Climate Accord is necessary. I just got grilled last night at an event called Unmuted because I was talking about the power of the United Nations, of working together, having international coalitions. And it was a crowd kind of more my age, and there was a lot of skepticism. We need to stop our American arrogance. Climate change is a global problem. And if we do better, but China's not, and if China does better and we're not, we're killing everyone, we're killing this planet. So I would lean in to more of the international treaties, not just the federal laws we have, but we really do have to change that Supreme Court because unfortunately, no matter what Congress passes, if the Supreme Court shoots it down, we have to start over. So anti-corruption is part of this plan.
wanted to ask these questions of every prospective candidate. What distinguishes to me a congressional representative from, say, a state legislature is foreign policy. But first, before we get to that, and I was glad that you mentioned climate change as part of foreign policy. Would you commit to joining the Progressive Caucus? Would you vote for block the bombs legislation and not take money from AIPAC? And would you vote against increases in the military budget?
I'm going to try to hit all of them. Please tell me if I missed one. So AIPAC funding is not going to happen. Number one, they wouldn't like me anyways. Let's be real. I'm way too liberal and progressive for them. Block the Bomb Act. I am going to support Israel only for defense because they are our ally in the Middle East, but not for any offense. So I believe the Israeli government is just as corrupt as the American government, but I think the Israeli people are just as good-hearted as you and I sitting here. They've been protesting the streets as we protest in our streets. So I'm not going to abandon the people of Israel, but I am going to hold their government to account. So we will protect the state of Israel. Jewish people have the right to a homeland, and I'm not going to take that away, but I will not stand by for human rights violations. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've studied human rights. This will happen over my dead body, literally. I will not allow people to kill innocent civilians allegedly for government reasons. So that will not be tolerated, and I hope that answers your question. I can't remember the Progressive Caucus, I will join. Oh, overall, not just specific to Israel. I'm sure you all know the Pentagon keeps losing millions of dollars magically. I wonder where. We know there's tons of corruption. So I actually think we need to pull that budget back because it's definitely going to fake contractors, and I worry what we are funding with that money. So government oversight is essential there. The GSA does a great job, but Congress members need to be holding hearings and tracking down every dollar that's been misused.
Thank you very much, Laura. All right, I think next up we have Matthew Shirka. You can come right up the middle aisle. All right, let's welcome Matthew.
It's warm in here, which is nice. Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you for having me. My name is Matthew Shirka. So I'm a candidate in this race because what we're all witnessing and what we're all seeing is our country is being dismantled. I know I'm someone who can do more. I know I can lead. And I'm a person with lived experience, with legislative experience, and I have spent my entire career coalition building. I'm a conversion therapy survivor. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's when someone tries to force an LGBTQ person to be straight or cisgender. So for 5 years, from ages 16 to 21, I was in conversion therapy in our district, where I had a medical professional tell me that I was mentally ill and that I suffered from a condition called SSA, which stands for same-sex attraction. One of the most horrible things that happened during that time is that I was not allowed to speak to my mother and my 2 sisters for 3 years. And I was told that suicide would be a better option for me. And so when I left conversion therapy and I was able to I became a young adult and I was able to leave. And I got the opportunity to found a national campaign and begin banning conversion therapy. I'm a native New Yorker. I lived in New York my whole life. My father immigrated here. Both my parents were New York City yellow cab drivers. I had the opportunity to watch them live through the American dream and succeed. And that very American dream is so out of reach for so many people today. My partner owns a cafe and market right here in the district. And I get to see the hurdles and struggles that small business owners go through in New York, and I see how that struggle gets more difficult every day. And it's clear that Donald Trump and Republicans are making that problem worse and making it harder for working families and small business owners to make not just ends meet, but make opportunity possible at all. This is going to be a hard fight, and I'm used to those tough fights. When I began banning conversion therapy, I led a team to banning conversion therapy in 27 states and over 120 municipality bills. And I did that with bipartisan support. I had the opportunity to work with 8 Republican governors in passing those bills. And so my life has been dedicated to coalition building. Now, it's one thing to pass a bill here in New York as a Democrat. It's another thing to pass bills in red states and purple states. And in this race, we have this opportunity. We actually have a luxury that we're in a safe blue district. And so there's an opportunity for all the voters to vote for someone who's not a part of the establishment, to have an outsider. And that is someone that I can see myself, who's with new experience, who's someone who's from the district, can bring to voters for everyone here. And so that's basically my pitch. So I'm excited to actually have the questions. So thank you for having me.
There's a law that excludes doing business with Israel. I don't know the exact name of it, but there is a law, a policy that does that. Would you advocate something like that?
I'm not sure of the specificity. You say any business, any small business? Are you talking about the purchase of bonds, or? I mean, yeah. So I know you're on the mic. This is what I'll say. I'm the son of an Israeli. I'm also Jewish. My family we're Persian Jews. We're Iranian Jews. My mom is 6 generations American living in New York. My father immigrated here after my family left Iran for Israel at its founding, and then my father moved to New York. When it comes to Israel, I care very deeply about the Israeli people. I care about my heritage. I also care about the Palestinian people. I am a board member at UNICEF for their Next Gen team. I help 25 to 45-year-olds support UNICEF in their mission, and I've been a member since before October 7th. So I don't know the particular rule or law that you're talking about, how businesses interact with Israel, but if it means interacting in the same way that with any other country in terms of what that interaction is, doing business the way we do all our businesses internationally, I don't see any issue with that. If there's like a more direct concern you have, but I am not, again, I want to maybe speak to the anti-Semitism part of it, and in what regard is it related to Israel? There's many products that go back and forth between both countries, etc. So, I would be supportive of business that is done one by the law and in good character, and follows that order.
Hi, I'm Hudson. I was previously very excited about Cameron Kasky's campaign, who I'd like to give a shout out to, who dropped out of the race, partially, I think, for fundraising issues, but also to advocate full-time on Capitol Hill for Palestinian rights. And I was really excited about his campaign because, similar to Zoran, he had 3 policies that he was honing in on. Number 1, stop funding the genocide of Palestinians. Number 2, abolish ICE. And number 3, Medicare for all. And I think any candidate being elected to anything in this country should support all 3 of those things. And he was also Jewish and queer and running for the seat. So I went to make sure, and I hope that all candidates would make clear in this, do you support all three of those things? Medicare for all, ending the genocide, and abolishing ICE?
Sure. I support abolishing ICE. I do support Medicare for all. I also support universal health care. It's very important to me. And I do not call the war in Israel a genocide. I'm also someone who is anti-war. I'm also someone who's lost people on October 7th. And I've been fundraising for kids in Gaza since before and after. And so I don't think the actual legal difference constitutes genocide, but I fight every single day to end the war. And the opportunity I get as someone who has a seat at the table at UNICEF is we go through what is the problem on the ground. I'm against the Benjamin Netanyahu's government. We get to see what aid goes in. Is Israel at fault? Is Israel blaming UNICEF or the UN in general at fault? And we get to actually see what is happening on the ground. So I have direct experience, but my commitment is a two-state solution. It is to bring safety and security to every Palestinian, to see Palestinian statehood and thrive as a state next to a thriving Israel. And that will always be my position.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier there was a representative in Massachusetts who said even though he was pro-Israel, he could no longer in good conscience take money from AIPAC because it has aligned itself with extremist settler groups in the West Bank and endorsed insurrectionists supporting Republicans. So even if you support Israel, would you refuse to take any money from AIPAC?
I haven't taken any money from AIPAC, and we haven't taken any money from any special interest groups. I think what the settlers are doing in the West Bank is horrific. What Ben Gvir is allowing to happen with the Benjamin Netanyahu government is horrific. I don't support any of the violence that is being promoted in the settlements in the West Bank. And we are not looking at talking to any interest groups right now.
Thank you. I asked you to give it up for Matthew, and you did, so thank you very much. And now we're going to call up our next candidate who's here is Alan Pardee, our next candidate for the 12th. Let's give him a warm welcome, please.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you for having me. My name is Alan Pardee. I grew up in Manhattan, lived my whole life in Manhattan. My parents, when I was born, lived about 10 blocks from where we're all standing and sitting. They moved across the park after a while, and so I spent more of my time on the Upper East Side. Okay, I see that I need to bring this a whole lot higher up. Oh, this might bend. Comes off, I know, but I'm half Dominican. I talk with my hands, so that this could go flying. So here we go. So yes, I do speak with my hands because I'm half Dominican. So I guess I'll go there. So my mother was from the Dominican Republic. My father was a longtime New Yorker. He's still alive. My mom has passed. And when I was growing up, they managed to have an affordable New York that doesn't exist anymore. And they managed with a government salary. My dad worked for the Federal Reserve as an economist. My mom had married him having worked for her central bank as a government employee there, moved here, moved to Puerto Rico first, and they were able to figure out how to make ends meet. They lived on 94th and West End, I guess, at that time. My dad had worked at Columbia and was living at Morningside Heights just before them. They moved across the park, and get this, they put down a $5,000 down payment to buy a $35,000 apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That is just simply not doable today. So there was a time that New York was affordable at some level. Two people, middle-class people, managed to raise a family and do a lot of things. That New York has seemed to have evaporated in the last bunch of years, and we're all living it. We all know how difficult it is. So I spent time with my family, and they taught me a lot of things. They taught me how to care about people. They taught me how to work hard. They taught me that education matters. And I've managed to thrive in this city. I've had a 30-year career in financial services and co-founded my own business, grew that business, helped other companies grow their businesses, brought a lot of jobs to New York City and helping grow startup companies and other things here in New York. So I know a thing or two about how to do math, which seems to be a lost art in the political class of this economy. So I mentioned my mom having lived in the Dominican Republic. She grew up under a dictatorship in the Dominican Republic. And I know what authoritarianism and dictatorship looks like, and know it from what it feels like in my bones. Any of you who've lived in Latin America knows what we're seeing right now. And what we're seeing right now is the path to authoritarianism. Right here, right now. Let's call it for what it is. This is fascism, this is dictatorship. We're here already. And we need to fight it. We need to change it. You know, as the only Latino in the race, let me say that we need to abolish ICE now, today, forever. We need to create a path to citizenship for immigrants who are here and to get green cards as well. Hardworking immigrants. This country was built on hardworking immigrants. All of us have an immigrant story. None of us got here, or our ancestors didn't get here on the wings of victory. We got here because of the opportunity that the United States of America provided. We need to keep that door open. So we need to attract more hardworking immigrants, not repel them. We certainly shouldn't be beating people on the streets. We shouldn't be seizing them. We shouldn't be deporting them. And God help us, we should certainly not be assassinating people on the streets of Minneapolis, which we have seen in the last couple of weeks. We need to stop all of this. We need to impeach Kristi Noem, and we need to hold the Trump administration accountable for its lawlessness. We need to focus on the affordability crisis. That's where our attention needs to go. We have a whole city and a whole country that can't figure out how to make ends meet. While they're busy creating all of this chaos, let me give you some statistics. 1 in 3 New Yorkers, people in New York City, within the 5 boroughs, went to a food pantry in the last 3 years. 1 in 3. Think about that as you walk the streets of New York, as you take the subway, as you look around this room, as you look around your houses of worship. 1 in 3. 1 in 5 rely upon food stamps, SNAP, to put food on the table for their families. This, in the richest city in the country, in the richest country on the planet, 1 in 3, 1 in 5. I get to see every day in my work as a spokesperson, active volunteer, and board member for New York Common Pantry just how hard it is for families to make ends meet. And they need to rely upon the New York Common Pantry to be able to feed their families. New York Common Pantry fed 11.7 million meals to 730,000 New Yorkers in the last fiscal year. Think about those numbers. We're a city of 8.5 million people. Bless you. Oh, thank you. I didn't realize how quick the time was going. So I'm going to speak a whole lot faster. So we need lasting change in this country to be able to fix the problems that we have. We need to fix the affordability crisis. How do we do that? We need to build more housing. We need to lower prices. And we need to cut taxes for the bottom half of this country. In other words, if you are the middle class through the lower, we can cut taxes in half for you tomorrow. Tomorrow. I'm going to play a little math question for all of you. If we took the middle family in the United States, for those who are math people, the median household income, down to the bottom, so the lower half of the income distribution in the United States, how much do you think that half of the population, so literally half of the country, pays in taxes as a percentage of the whole that the IRS collects from people and not corporations? So the whole pot that comes from the IRS, how much do you think the bottom half are responsible for? Call out a few numbers. 80%. Sorry? 90%. 50. The actual number is under 3%. Under 3. So think about that for a moment. We all believe it's 80 and 90% because the political class tells us that, because they make it so hard to think about cutting taxes. Somehow we always can cut taxes for Elon Musk, but we can't cut taxes for everybody else. The number is under 3%. We literally can do that tomorrow. Cut it in half, right now. It's 1.5% of what Uncle Sam receives from people. Forget corporations, that adds more. We can do it tomorrow. Where do we get the money? Well, guess where? We get it from people who have more. And we can take it from the people like Donald Trump who have paid zero in tax for the last bunch of years, and all the people like that, and solve that. So I got 1 minute remaining, so here we go. So I'm going to cut taxes for everyone in this room by half. If you're on the top end, I'm sorry, I might increase yours. And another way that we can fund that 1.5 and a bunch of other things that we need to do as a country is to bring in more immigrants. I mentioned attracting more immigrants. Immigrants are taxpayers. We're chasing people around in their workplaces right now. If we bring in more tax-paying immigrants, we have a great American job fair for all those jobs that don't get filled otherwise, whether they're in agriculture, whether they're in construction, whether they're in hospitality, whether they're H-1B visa eligible. Bring in more people, grow the economy, and by the way, they pay taxes and we can reduce everybody else's as well. So I'm here to run for Congress to change the way we think about how to do things. And my time is up, and so I'm going to say thank you very much. And I think we have some time for Q&A, and you'll tell me how much. 5 minutes. Yes, thank you. Hi there, right behind her. Yes, you.
They're going to kick me out. So I have a question I'm asking a lot of candidates.
Sure.
We obviously have critical national and international issues, but as Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local.
That it is.
Give an example of a time you worked on an issue in association with community boards and local groups.
Sorry, I missed the last phrase. Could you say again?
Give an example of a time you worked on an issue with community boards and local groups.
So I have spent a ton of time with the New York Common Pantry trying to solve the affordability crisis head on as it relates to feeding all of our neighbors. And so that takes me everywhere. So I'm a spokesperson. I go to schools. I go to churches. I've got a colleague who does the synagogues. I go to Democratic clubs. I haven't gone here, but I've gone to lots of them. I've spoken with community board leaders. I've spoken to every elected official you can name and had them come to the New York Common Pantry to see what we do so that we can help people put food on the table for families. The fact that so much of this city, not just this district, but the whole of the city, is reliant upon food pantries and SNAP is an abomination. And so I've been very active in that regard. Thank you so much for your question. Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm trying
You're
to
calling?
get people who haven't spoken.
Your turn. Absolutely.
Candidates, which committees would you like to serve on in Congress?
That's a great question. So there are several. I don't know which I'll get because that's the way it works. You don't know until you get there. The most boring sounding name that they have actually has the most activity that is relevant to us right now, in my opinion, which is Ways and Means. So what does Ways and Means actually do? It figures out how to handle taxation. So if I'm going to cut your taxes in half, I got to land there. It figures out how to preserve and protect and defend Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. We need to do those things, direct and protect those, and so I will be there doing that. And by the way, if you want to defund ICE, it kind of helps to be there too. You can do that in a few other committees also. So that would be number one. I'd also like to be in appropriations. That's where the money gets spent, which also means it's where it gets unspent as well. So there are things that I would like to defund as well as things I'd like to fund, and you can do that from the Appropriations Committee. As a New Yorker, I also want to be where transportation and infrastructure happen. So we all know what things need fixing here in this country, in this city, and I'd like to be a force for good for that as well. So 3, if I can cheat and take 3 committees.
I think we have time for one more question. Our APAC question.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've been asking every candidate I possibly can this. Will you refuse to take any money from AIPAC because it doesn't represent what it means to support Israel as a Jewish state? It has partnered with extremist groups in the West Bank, and AIPAC has endorsed insurrectionist Republicans. So
Absolutely.
I would appreciate if every candidate commits to not taking AIPAC money.
So I've got a lot to say, because everyone might, as it relates to all topics related to Israel. So let me start with away from your question and end with your question, if you don't mind. So let's start at first principles. I believe that the Jewish state of Israel has the right to exist, and I believe that it has the right to defend itself. It was attacked brutally, horribly on October 7th, and that was awful. I believe in a two-state solution. I believe the Abraham Accords are the answer for new activity to create more. And so as it relates to the specifics of your question, yes, I'm not planning to take any money from AIPAC. I don't think they're looking for me either to do that, but yes. So I have 1 minute remaining, so that apparently means one more question.
So you're a first-time candidate for office, right?
Yes.
And you consider yourself to be a political outsider. I was just wondering how you were able to raise over $1 million within a short period of time, being a political outsider. Where does your donations come from?
Certainly. So I have been spending every waking minute, it feels like, for the last 3 months on the telephone talking to people that I almost remember. Some of them I went to school with, some of them are in my building, some of them I went to college with, some of them are professionals in my work world that I've had over time. And some have been very generous with their donations. Some have avoided my calls, and I've called 6 or 8 times. So it's basically a lot of expenditure of shoe leather to bang on doors, figuratively through the phone, I guess, and calling people. I've had a business life, so there are a lot of business people that I know that have gravitated to what I've said. This whole idea that 3% is all that we're talking about. It's surprising to me how many business people, when they hear that math, say, we should do that tomorrow. So I've gotten a lot of support from small business owners, medium-sized business owners, and the rest who are feeling like that math makes a lot of sense to them. Let's cut taxes for the bottom half of this country now. And I got a red card that says thank you and goodbye. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you for your warm send-off to Mr. Pardee. We now are going to hear from our second to last candidate for the 12th Congressional District, Jack Schlossberg. And as he comes to the podium, I just want to say on behalf of all of us, we're so sorry about your sister. She was extremely brave.
Thank you so much. I'm Jack. Great to see all of you. Thank you so much for having me here. I just want to say that this makes me so optimistic. It's very easy to feel pessimistic and like things are beyond our control, but you guys could be doing anything tonight, and I know that this is just one night of so many that this organization and all of you, I'm sure, have devoted to the hard work of civic engagement here in New York City. So I just really appreciate that. I'm born and raised here, and I really appreciate anyone who contributes in that way, so thank you. I want to talk a little bit tell you guys why I'm running for Congress, and maybe tell a story after that. So, in 3 words, why I'm running for Congress: past, present, and the future. I feel connected to a past. We all do. It's something we all share. It's the generations that came before us that built this country. The greatest generation which sent a man to the moon and defeated fascism around the world. This country is turning 250 years old this year. And people called the founders crazy at the time. There were no democracies on earth when our country was founded. And now we're the greatest, most powerful country in the world. And how did that happen? How did we go from a crazy idea that everyone said wouldn't work in 1776 to being the world's most powerful, #1 economy, most powerful military? I think that's because Americans believed. They believed that we were all in this together. They believed that the federal government was something worth fighting for, that it was competent and it cared, and that it could make a difference. That we could lead the world in science and technology, and we could protect people's rights here at home. People believed in the federal government, that politics was a noble profession, that we weren't all just in it for ourselves. And I think that that's how we became the country that we are today. And that's certainly the lesson that I take from my own ancestors and generations that came before us who built New York. The Bill of Rights was signed here in Manhattan. The path to progress has run through New York City on almost every issue: abolition, labor movement, women's rights, LGBTQ rights. New York has played a central role in getting people to believe in a progressive ideal, that America could be a great progressive country, that we could do things together and invest in people. So in the past, people believed. In the present, we have a president and a Republican Party that succeeds when nobody believes in anything. And the number of people who believe in the federal government's competence is at an all-time low, especially among young people. People do not believe that the system is even worth engaging in because it's all so corrupt, that their vote doesn't count, that there's just no point. And they, honestly, I don't blame them, because they have a lot of reasons to think that based on what they're seeing. And the president is determined to get that number as low as he possibly can. Don't even bother, just be in it for yourself. So I'm running because I still believe, and I will never stop believing, and I refuse to accept that reality. I still believe in America. I still believe that politics is a noble calling. And I want a future where we believe again. I want a future where we give people something to be proud of, something that they can buy into, people with integrity, who use their platform and their position in life for their community and for others and for the best of the country. I want us to believe again, and I will never stop believing. And this wasn't my plan to run for Congress right now, to do it this way in this race. But in 2024, I saw a problem. In early 2024, I saw a problem. Democrats were, and we all know it now, Democrats were getting outcompeted online. People my age were on their phones getting fed subliminally right-wing messaging. You would look at one workout video and all of a sudden you're in this Maha RFK Jr. hole where it's all this pseudoscience and it's just by picking up your phone and looking and it's everywhere. And I love Joe Biden. I won't apologize for it. I think Joe Biden's first 2 years in office were one of the most incredible accomplishments legislatively, incredible moral leadership. There's a lot to say about the 2024 election, but I believe that Joe Biden was a transformational leader and one of progressivism's greatest champions. And I saw that when it was happening. The Inflation Reduction Act, Build Back Better, he got so much done. And that was a story that I wasn't hearing anywhere. I didn't see any Joe Biden fans on my phone. And certainly not any young men on my phone talking about progressive values. And this was early 2024. At the same time, my cousin was what I found using my family name to kind of distort our legacy and hand it over to the president. And that really, really bothered me. And for a long time, I didn't think that was my battle to fight and I should, I can't control what he does. And then I was like, no, if I don't say something, I won't be able to live with myself. And at the time, I was working for the Biden campaign. I signed up to go to Wilmington to work there. And I wanted to make social media videos. That's what they hired me to do, youth engagement. And so I had a lot of ideas. No. I had another idea. No, we don't think that's a good idea. Here, how about this? No. And finally, I was like, I respect you all so much, and this might be a huge mistake, but I quit. I have to make these videos. And a month later, they were asking me to travel to every swing state across the country as a top surrogate, asking me to speak at the DNC. I was a delegate from New York at the DNC. And I had built a following of young people around the country. I met thousands of young people at universities, not just young people actually, but so many people who were so engaged, who were so excited, who really believed, who wanted to be a part of something. And they did not need a superhero. All they needed was like a goofy video, someone taking risks, willing to make jokes or make light of themselves in order to make a point that they would stand up for other people in the Democratic Party. And so I made videos, and now a lot of people are making videos. And something that I learned at the DNC and through doing that was that if you want to be in politics now and you want to get something done, yes, you need to have legislative understanding, government understanding. I went to law school, and I've loved politics ever since I can remember. But you also need to basically run a little production company now. You have to kind of be an actor. And I wouldn't design the world this way if it were up to me, but this is where we're at. And that's something that I know how to do. It's a polluted ecosystem, but I know how to breathe that air. That's not the only thing I know how to do, but I think that this district, Manhattan, New York 12, should have somebody who can really galvanize public attention and put pressure on the president and the Republican Party. Because like it or not, that's the world we live in now. And I want to make sure that the place that I grew up, that I love, has somebody there who people can hear. So I learned a lot by doing that. I learned how to make content that resonated. I learned a lot about what people did and did not pay attention to and how to package messaging. And it turns out a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. And that's kind of been my strategy the whole time. Anyway, when the opportunity came to represent my home in this moment that I think could be the most important in our country's history, this could be our last chance. This is our last chance to stop Trump and a third term. I think this is like code red. Anyway, that's why I'm running, because I still believe, and because I think I would be uniquely suited with experience to be a great congressperson.
I'm going to call on people who haven't yet spoken. How about Earl? And remember, please limit your question to a question.
Yeah. There's a question about foreign policy, and the world is just rapidly changing. We see Trump going crazy. A lot of his ability to do what he's doing now, like in Venezuela, continuing the stiffer embargo on Cuba, all that was from people that came before him. But at the same time, will you continue in the anti-communist and anti-socialist trend followed by both parties for decades and decades of my life, and that I think we're spending all this money, trillions of dollars, in a so-called war against terror, war against drugs? How is that going to change? How will you bring that money home to the American people?
Thank you. I think this is such an important question and something that I think a lot about. Our Congress has abdicated its power entirely. We have 3 co-equal branches of government, but there's a reason that Article 1 has Congress in it. The first for a reason. Congress has the most critical powers in our government, the power to declare war, to spend money, to regulate the economy. And it completely abdicated its power to one person who's making decisions like invading Greenland and taking out another government. And every single day it's something new. So I think it starts with electing people who do not accept that as the role of Congress, and electing a Democratic majority now that looks different than it did in the past, that we try something new. The only thing that has ever worked in the face of authoritarian governments is the power and energy of committed people, and especially of a new generation that's willing to think differently and bring more people into the process. So I think that Congress ultimately, in its powers in foreign policy, is supreme. And we need to start acting that way, legislating that way, and making sure that the president is not able to effectively declare war on his own, because that is not what it says in the Constitution.
Someone who has 2 people over there. Lynn.
Hi, thank you for coming. You've spoken at length about your desire to, can you hear me? About repealing the SALT cap for New York. Studies have shown that overwhelmingly would give money back to very, very rich people in New York. Can you speak a little bit about why that sort of tax payday would be beneficial for all New Yorkers and all Americans?
Yes, thank you for asking that. So my role as a candidate is to introduce policies that might have a chance of actually happening. So I released what we call Jack's Housing Fairness Plan. We're putting a roof over fairness. And we have 3 parts, one for renters, one for property owners, and one for NYCHA tenants. For renters, I'm the first person to propose it, what I call a standard renter's deduction, which would allow you to deduct a portion of your rent from your federal income taxes, just like you do a mortgage interest payment. So that would really help renters in this city, 50% of which are rent burdened in New York. The SALT cap repeal is for property owners. You're right that it would primarily help a higher income demographic, but not just a higher income demographic. Everyone would benefit from that as long as you itemize your taxes. So property owners would benefit more, but I think that's important too. I don't think we should be elevating rich people over poor people. That's what has got us into this situation. Income inequality, I think, is the #1 social issue facing America. But I think the SALT cap repeal, to me, really stands for another idea as well. Not only are we going to incentivize people to invest in the city and stay in the city, which we need, but what's happening now is the president is punishing blue states on purpose, and the SALT cap is one primary way that he does that. Blue states, for a long time, and happily so, have contributed more into the federal government than we get out. That means that we have subsidized the development of other states. That doesn't work for us anymore because those states are now, they deregulate their labor laws and it's unfair. And New York should not be treated as a state that should just subsidize blank check and not get anything out of it. And the SALT cap is the way that President Trump has financially implemented that. And I think it stands for the proposition that we can't allow him to punish blue states just because that's something that he's able to do. We should at least demand fairness. And then the last part of our housing plan is the Fix It Now caucus. Did you know that NYCHA is the largest public housing administration in the country? It takes more than a year on average for a maintenance request to get filled. I really want to focus on the people who are living here to make sure that they're living in dignity and safe and habitable conditions. So the Fix It Now caucus is something I would form, if elected, to specifically address the backlog in repairs. So yeah, the SALT cap is really part of a three-part plan on housing. Thank you.
Are we done? I'm sorry, we're out of time, so let's give a warm send-off to Mr. Schlossberg.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Two things I want to say before I bring up our last candidate. I know many of you came because you thought you were going to hear from George Conway. We did not hear from him, and he is not coming, and I'm very sorry, but that's the way it goes. Before I introduce Assemblymember Michael Lasher, I do want to say that there were some potential gaps in speakers tonight. And I want to say that our council member, Gail Brewer, had stepped up to fill any potential gaps. And so I just want everybody to acknowledge Gail for a minute, and then we're going to call up Micah. Okay, please give a warm welcome to Assemblymember Micah Lasher.
Good evening, Three Parks Independent Democrats. And good evening, Councilmember Gail A. Brewer, who is my hero. It is wonderful to see everyone. I am always thrilled to be with this group of amazing activists, and on those occasions when I get to stand before you and seek your support, as I have done a few times over the years, that is a particular honor. And we have stood together in campaigns. We've won, we've lost. They've been my campaigns, they've been other people's campaigns, and I know what just in this group represents the spirit of activism of the Upper West Side, represents the basic idea that we make change when people in government work with activists on the ground to demand change. And you push me, you support me, you hold me accountable, and I am grateful for every piece of that relationship. Thank you. I am running for Congress because I believe we are in an existential fight for everything that we care about in this country, and that the Democratic Party is fundamentally failing to meet the moment. And we need to bring to DC a fighting spirit, a level of strategic action that is missing. And that is what I've tried to do in the legislature. From day one, when you helped me serve in the State Assembly, I have searched for every tool and lever that I could to use state power to fight back against the band of fascists that have taken over our country. So when Donald Trump called up the governor of Texas and said, I want you to steal 5 congressional seats for the Republican Party, I introduced a constitutional amendment to allow New York State to do a mid-decade redistricting, and I believe we will pass that amendment for the first time in this legislative session. when the Trump administration started playing games with money that was owed to New York State, to our hospitals, to our community-based organizations, to our child care providers, I introduced the Recourse Act to provide a mechanism for New York State to withhold from the federal government money when they illegally hold up money that is due to the state of New York. When Donald Trump shut down the CFPB and the SEC and stopped protecting consumers and stopped taking on the banks and the financial institutions that too often take advantage of Americans, I worked with Attorney Tish James. We introduced and passed the first significant expansion of New York State's law on consumer protection in 40 years so she could do the work the federal government has stopped doing. And just this month, in the executive budget, 3 different pieces of legislation that I have proposed were incorporated into the executive budget. One, to deal with the fact that our public health agencies at the federal level have been taken over by anti-science quacks, to empower the state health department to make recommendations around vaccines that ensure that we can still get the vaccines we need at our pharmacies. That's in the executive budget. And both of the significant proposals related to curtailing ICE's reign of terror, one, to protect people from civil arrest at sensitive locations, schools, houses of worship, healthcare facilities, that's a last year bill. And the second, to allow each New Yorker to hold individual ICE agents accountable when they violate our civil liberties. That's the executive budget. That's a last year bill. And I will take that legislative spirit to Washington, D.C., where we need to use every tool we've got to throw sand in the works of this reactionary agenda and over the long term rebuild faith in the Democratic Party. Now, I want to pause here and just tell you a little bit about my week. On Saturday, my son Ben is here, and I did not coerce him into coming. He and I were down in Union Square on Saturday. Some of you were there, marching in protest of the horrific murder of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis, and coming home in discussion with members of my team, I decided to go to Minneapolis. And I got on a plane early on Sunday morning. We got out just before the blizzard hit, and I spent 2 days on the ground in Minneapolis. And thank you. But I want to tell you what I saw there, because it brought home for me something. We are all aware of what is happening. We march about it, we speak about it, but boy, I really feel like I understand it better now. The presence of ICE there has changed the entire way people live in Minneapolis and St. Paul. There are 3 times as many ICE agents there as there are uniformed police officers. So to put that in context for New York City, imagine we had 100,000, 120,000 ICE agents rolling around our city, terrorizing people, driving through neighborhoods, pulling people over at random, banging on doors. When I got there, one of the things I experienced was there's an enormous mutual aid infrastructure set up, and I didn't quite immediately understand why. That was a big thing during COVID. Well, there's a big mutual aid infrastructure because you have huge numbers of people now that are afraid to leave their homes. And so they're not working, and they can't get food, and they can't get laundry. And the randomness of it, it's a mass bounty hunt. It is something out of a dystopian movie. And I've talked, I think here, about how what we're seeing from Trump is straight out of the fascist playbook of history. And it is well advanced in Minneapolis. They are in a fight for their city. We need to get ICE out of Minneapolis. It needs to become so politically costly for this administration that they don't think about bringing this to any other city. But it brought home to me that we are fighting for the soul of this country. And we need people in Congress who understand that, who understand the stakes, and who have the skills to fight back. The people in this district should not have to choose between energy and fighting spirit and experience. And that is the case that I'm going to make to the voters of this district, and I would be honored, absolutely honored, to do it with the support of the people in this room and this outstanding organization. So thank you so much, and I'd be eager to take your questions.
Again, I'm going to try to call on people who haven't asked questions. Tina. Oh, look, she's waiting for the mic. Can you imagine? Up here, up here.
Hi, Micah. Thank you. I want to ask you a question. Do you think the Israelis are committing genocide in Palestine? Yes or no?
What I believe is that what has happened to the Palestinians in both Gaza and the West Bank is absolutely awful and appalling. Tens of thousands of people killed in Gaza and an ongoing reign of terror in the West Bank. And my job, I believe, as somebody who is going to cling to the proposition that you can care about the safety and future of Israelis, and you can care about the safety and future of Palestinians. And I'm going to hold on to that belief, even if it feels like there is a vanishingly small universe of people that believe that, and seek to build goodwill, people of goodwill around that proposition. And I'm going to answer the question. And my view is that arguing about the word we use to describe horrible things, an argument that does have the effect of dividing people that would otherwise be in agreement, that's not an argument that I want to devote my energy to. Thank you.
I want to start by quoting Martin Luther King, who said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So in his spirit, I would like to ask you to clarify a statement you made before a tenants association meeting at Parkworth Village in November. You stated in response to a concern from a tenant who was concerned about anti-Semitic incidents, you said to her that you were an unapologetic Zionist. And I was stunned, although I recognize that you have the right to your own personal views. But you need to understand why I was stunned, because that statement caused me to have traumatic flashbacks to my childhood as I watched television reports detailing the cruel, violent, and inhumane treatment of black and brown South Africans under the apartheid governments. And that included the massacre of over 500 students at the Soweto uprising in 1976. So know that your statement was very triggering and personal to me. So the question is, I believe that black and brown, conscious whites, and Jews for peace, who would be your potential constituents, would like clarification on this Zionist statement. Where does that statement leave us? How would you, or could you represent those of us whose views are contrary to yours on Gaza? Or would you represent your own personal views?
I don't generally use the word unapologetic to describe myself, but I will in any context, but I'll accept that that was the phrase that I used. Here's what I'm unapologetic about, Pat, and I appreciate the question, and I know what a difficult issue this is. I'm an unapologetic believer in the vision that Israel's founders had in 1948, which was as a homeland and as a refuge for the Jewish people, that was also grounded in justice and fairness and equality for all. And I believe that the current Israeli government, and frankly, the right-wing politics that have dominated Israel for much of the last 2+ decades. I'm 44 years old, and if you're much younger than me, You don't remember a time when the idea of two states for two peoples actually seemed like a viable idea. So that, to me, is the vision of Israel and the meaning of Zionism to me. And the way that Israel is being run today and the way that the Palestinian people are treated is not the Israel that I grew up believing and not the Israel that I want to see in the future.
Up here in front, this gentleman with the purple shirt. And I believe this is the last question.
Thanks very much. What happened to was it the recapture bill that you introduced to withhold, to give
the Recourse Act.
The Recourse Act, yes.
It was called...
Great idea.
I thank you, Peter. It was said, I think, that it was too aggressive. And I should observe, by the way, that you don't, in fact, the truth is you don't need legislation to hold back money from the federal government. You need the people in charge of sending money. I should clarify, by the way, we talk a lot about the money we send to Washington. This specifically refers to money that passes through state hands, which is largely the withholdings from the state workforce, which we think is about $4 billion a year. The city actually has a bigger pot because they have a bigger workforce. So if you could get the city into the game, you'd be talking about $10 billion or so. And the idea is that it's sort of taking a legal hostage, in a sense, in a potential legal fight with the federal government. But I've introduced about 20 bills that in different ways fight back against Trump. And some of them have passed, and some of them face too much opposition. As I said, I'm very pleased that 3 of them seem to be on the fast track to passage right now, on ICE and on vaccines. I believe that my Recourse Act looks better and better with each passing day as Trump plays more and more games with money that New York State is owed. So I guess I will say I hope I start seeming less crazy and my colleagues start seeing the wisdom of that bill perhaps more than they have until now. I will just say in closing, it is again wonderful to see everyone, and I would be so truly honored to earn your support in this campaign. Thank you very much.
All right, so before you all start getting up and leaving, I think we're going to hear from our district leaders, or would you like to speak, Gail? No, they're hovering behind me. It's hard to tell what they want, but I think they wanted you to come up if you wanted to. All right, let's give it up for Gail, who really was going to step in.
Thank you very much. I'll be very local, just like Rich suggested. So a couple of things. In the city council, when Mr. Adams left, he vetoed 20 bills. And so the city council tomorrow is poised, I believe, at least 19 of them to be overridden. And it's everything from the land bank bill that I have to a bill that says ICE should not be on Rikers Island, and we should have some vendors. So it's a mixture, but it's amazing that we have 20 of them that we're going to be overriding tomorrow. Secondly, I think some of the topics that will come up this year will be, obviously, housing, figuring that out, small fees and fines for small business, how they could be eliminated if appropriate. I'm very interested in insurance, even though it's a state issue. What can we do locally? And then, of course, I have now head up the Government Operations Committee, which has all of the voting, Board of Elections, and of course DCAS, and many other 12 different agencies that come under it that are very operating oriented. Locally, I'm still trying to save the West Park Presbyterian Church, and I thank everybody who's been part of that. What a friggin' fight with the Presbytery. And then ABC Extel, which is where ABC left on 67th Street. There's no zoning, so it's not like I can do a ULURP, although we're going to try to do that. There's a lot of angst about the schools in the district. If you have friends or family who went to Center School, which has been asked to move, and some of the other middle schools have been asked to change some of their locations. So we're all trying to work that out, but it's not easy. We're very proud that Kamar Samuels, who was our superintendent, is now the chancellor of the Department of Education, and that's a big deal. Some of the smaller kids, pre-K, are going to be moved to 1972 Broadway, which is a building that I found that the Department of Education did not know they were renting. And then finally, I'm in the Progressive Caucus, and we are working on a whole different, lots of different issues. I joined now because of everything that we've discussed for the last 2 hours, and you know how awful our country is in terms of its shape and how it impacts locally. So that's a quick version. Thank you very much. 3 Parks.
Okay, so we're going to be voting on candidates from tonight and additional candidates on February 11th and February 18th. If you have been a member and you have not paid your dues, please do so really fast. We also have Election Day on February 3rd. As you all know, Eric Botcher is the Democratic candidate, and so we would look forward to seeing you participate, exercise your franchise, and let's all fight together to eradicate fascism in the United States. We are hereby adjourned. However, I want to give a particular shout out to Teresa Cantor, our district leader, for putting tonight together. She spent hours on the phone, hours texting, hours emailing. She got everybody here, and you're all getting out at 20 after 9. So thank you for coming.